You won't believe what happened to me. I was sitting alone at 2 o'clock in the morning in a 5-star hotel room in Maui, wearing a white satin robe, my makeup still flawless from the photo shoot we'd done hours earlier. On my lap was my husband's phone. He'd left it charging in the bathroom, buzzing nonstop with messages from a woman named Sasha, Flight 743. "Free yet, love?" read the latest notification. My heart raced. I could barely breathe. I opened the conversation. Photos, voice messages, plans to meet that very night while I slept, exhausted from our second day of our honeymoon. The most surreal part? They'd met on the flight to Hawaii while I was asleep next to him, earbuds in, half watching a romantic comedy. Yes, he met her on the plane, on the flight to our honeymoon. But before I tell you how this trip turned into my worst nightmare and how I exposed them both in front of tourists from 3 countries, you need to know how I got here. I met Andrew on an ordinary Tuesday in New York in the lobby of the Strand bookstore near Union Square. I was flipping through a rare edition of Wuthering Heights when he appeared out of nowhere, saying it was his mother's favorite book. He had this effortless charm, a crooked smile, strikingly clear blue eyes, and tousled light brown hair that looked like it belonged in a shampoo commercial. He wore a brown leather jacket from All Saints, dark jeans, and pristine white sneakers. His cologne was unforgettable, something woody with a citrus undertone that lingered in your memory. His voice was calm, captivating, with a slight southern drawl that made everything more enchanting. We exchanged a few words about books and coffee, then left the bookstore for a nearby cafe. 4 hours of conversation felt like 30 minutes. 3 months later, we were living together in a small apartment in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Andrew was a freelance screenwriter, spending hours at his computer writing for shows I never had time to watch. I was a graphic designer at an agency, loving my work despite my toxic boss's demands. Our relationship was intense. Andrew was the kind of man who made breakfast on Wednesdays, left notes in my books, and knew exactly when to hug me without saying a word. It was the kind of affection that made you think, "I've finally found someone who sees me." The proposal came out of the blue during a weekend in Chicago. We were staying at a boutique hotel in Wicker Park. It was winter, snowing heavily outside, and he got down on one knee on the room's rug while I wore a ridiculous pizza-patterned pajama. The ring was simple, white gold, but he said he chose it because it matched the sparkle in my eyes. I laughed and said yes. We planned the wedding in just 5 months. Nothing traditional. An intimate ceremony on a Manhattan hotel rooftop with 25 guests and a jazz band. My mother cried, my grandmother fainted from emotion, and his speech drew applause, even from those who didn't believe in love. We chose Maui for our honeymoon because Andrew said Hawaii was where souls recharge. The itinerary was set by a boutique agency, 7 days in a luxury resort, an overwater bungalow, everything timed to be the trip of a lifetime. On the morning of the trip, I was radiant. I wore beige linen pants, a white top, and a denim jacket. Andrew, as always, looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. A light blue dress shirt rolled to the elbows, chino pants, and that same cologne. In the taxi to the airport, he was excited, snapping photos of us and posting stories with the caption, "The start of everything." The flight was long but pleasant. I slept most of the way. When I woke up, he was laughing with a woman seated in the row next to us. She was tan, with dark hair, red lipstick, a high ponytail, and a top far too tight for an international flight. Her sweet, cloying perfume invaded even my sleep mask. "This is Sasha. She's also going to Maui," he said casually, as if it were just a coincidence. I smiled politely and went back to my music. I had no idea that in that moment, my honeymoon had begun to crumble. The first night at the resort was perfect, or so I thought. We dined by candlelight at the oceanfront restaurant, toasted with rosé sparkling wine, and took photos he posted on Instagram with the caption, "With the woman of my life." The room was a dream. A king-size bed with a white canopy, a balcony overlooking the Pacific sunset, and even a private jacuzzi. It felt straight out of a brochure. But something was off with Andrew from the moment we arrived. He was glued to his phone more than usual. He said he needed to revise an urgent script, something non-negotiable. During our romantic dinner, he went to the bathroom 3 times in less than an hour. On the third, I noticed he took his phone with him. He never did that. The next morning, While I was getting ready for a catamaran tour, he said he had a slight headache and wanted to stay in the room. It felt odd, but I didn't push. I went alone to see sea turtles and take photos. When I returned, he was in the shower, and the bed was messed up in a way that didn't seem consistent with a headache. There was a sweet scent in the air, the same one from the plane. "Did you use my body spray?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Sure, thought it might help with the headache," he replied without looking at me. That afternoon, we walked along the beach, but he was distant. His phone kept buzzing, and he always kept it face down. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just stress or something trivial, but my intuition was screaming. Still, I stayed quiet. On the third day, we had a surf lesson scheduled. Andrew said he'd meet me there, but never showed up. The instructor waited 40 minutes before we went without him. When I returned to the resort furious, he was at the pool bar laughing with Sasha. Yes, she was staying at the same resort. She wore a plunging black swimsuit and oversized sunglasses. He was shirtless, flashing that same charming smile he'd used on me when we met. When he saw me, he waved as if inviting me to join them. I froze. "Carla, love, this is Sasha. Remember her from the plane? She's here with some friends," he shouted, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Of course I remember," I replied, forcing a smile. "I just didn't know you were planning to meet up. Coincidence, believe it or not. She saw me at the restaurant last night and we came for a drink." "Weren't you having a headache last night?" I asked, looking him in the eye. "It got better after some rest," he said shamelessly. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited until he was asleep and took his phone. I'm not one to invade anyone's privacy, but everything in me said something was deeply wrong. And that's when I found the contact saved as Sasha, Flight 743. There were over 50 messages exchanged since the day of the flight. Flirty conversations, intimate photos, video exchanges, and the most infuriating part, a detailed plan to meet during our stay at the resort. There were even schedules aligned with times I'd be busy with activities so he could sneak off with her. "Can't wait to feel you again," read one message sent just hours after our wedding ceremony. My body went cold. Reality hit me like a wave. I'd been betrayed, not just emotionally, but with calculation, strategy, and coldness. During our honeymoon, with a woman he met on the flight to this very destination. I could have screamed right then. I could have woken him with slaps. But no, I took a deep breath and saved everything. I took screenshots, recorded audio, made backups. Because what came next needed to be planned. And here's what I call my turning point. Before I tell you what I did, imagine being in my shoes. You just got married. You're thousands of miles from home. Your parents, your friends, everyone thinks you're living the best moment of your life. And there you are, heartbroken, your dignity crushed, and certain you've been made a fool of. In the middle of paradise, I had two choices: pretend I didn't know and bear the pain alone, or turn the tables, and that's what I did. The next morning, I woke up before Andrew. The sun streamed through the linen curtains. The sound of the ocean was calm and steady, but inside me, a storm was raging. I got out of bed, put on my white swimsuit and my favorite cover-up, a sheer floral blue dress. I tied my hair in a low bun and applied the red lipstick I wore on days I needed courage. And that day, I needed all of it. I went down to the resort's front desk with my phone and a clear plan. I spoke to the manager, a serious woman named Marissa, who was shocked after hearing my story and seeing the screenshots. "We want your experience here to be perfect, Mrs. We can help with whatever you need," she said. And so, with the resort staff's help, I set up the most elegant and humiliating trap possible. That night, the hotel was hosting a themed dinner, a special event with Hawaiian cuisine, traditional dances, and an open mic for newlyweds' declarations. Perfect. During the day, I acted normal. We had breakfast together. He kissed me as if nothing had happened, talked about the day's plans, complimented my dress. He was so good at lying, it made me sick. At 8 o'clock in the evening, we went down for the dinner. Sasha was there too, at a nearby table, wearing a tight red dress, laughing with her friends, but keeping her eyes on Andrew. I knew he'd told her he'd find a way to slip away later. The restaurant was packed. Couples from all over the world, candlelight, live music. At one point, the MC, a kind Hawaiian woman, took the microphone. Now, we'd like to invite our newlyweds to come up front and share a bit of their love with all of us. Andrew looked at me, surprised. Shall we, love? Of course, I replied, smiling. We went up to the small stage. He took the mic first, said some generic words about love, luck, and fate. He got applause. Then he handed me the mic with that loving look I once adored, and now found repulsive. Thank you, Andrew, I began. You were a surprise in my life, one of those you never forget. When I met you, I thought I was finally safe. I thought I was loved. But today, on our honeymoon, I discovered something that changes everything. The room fell silent. Sasha froze in her chair. Andrew's eyes widened. I found out that my newlywed husband is having an affair with a woman he met on the flight here. I found out they planned to deceive me during this trip. I found out that while I was swimming with dolphins, he was sneaking through the hotel hallways with someone else. The reaction was immediate. Murmurs, phones raised, some even clapping. Sasha stood, trying to leave. But Marissa and a staff member intercepted her, politely but firmly. Andrew tried to grab the mic, but I stepped back. I have proof, messages, photos, audio. And no, I'm not crying. I'm setting myself free. Because this is the last night I spend beside a man who sees me as a fool. I stepped off the stage to a round of applause. Marissa was waiting with a new key to a separate bungalow from the one we'd shared. Andrew tried to follow me, but he was stopped. The staff had been instructed. Sasha, meanwhile, was asked to leave the resort. And Andrew? He spent the night in the room, alone. When I returned the next day to get my things, he tried to explain, crying, swearing it was a mistake, that he was confused, that he loved me. You loved the idea of me. You loved the status. But actual love, you don't know what that is, I said firmly, zipping my suitcase. I took a taxi to another hotel. For the rest of the trip, I lived my own honeymoon. I hiked trails, swam in waterfalls, dined alone at incredible restaurants, made friends with other tourists, and even danced hula at a beachside luau. For the first time in days, maybe months, I felt light. I returned to New York alone, tanned, with an invisible scar on my heart, one that doesn't bleed but changes everything. My mother was waiting at the airport with a long hug and teary eyes. She already knew everything. Social media had spread the story. Yes, someone recorded my speech at the dinner and posted it. The video got millions of views in 2 days. At first, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to be remembered as the betrayed bride from Hawaii. But then the messages started pouring in. Women who'd been through similar situations. Men apologizing to their wives for things they'd overlooked. People saying they found the courage to leave abusive relationships. That gave me strength. My pain was turning into something bigger, something useful. Andrew tried to reach me. He sent flowers, gifts, wrote a 5-page email saying he was sorry, that Sasha meant nothing, that it was an escape, an illusion. I read it and deleted it, without replying. Then came the anger. I found out he'd lied about even small things. He never submitted the script he claimed to be working on, and he'd taken money from our account to buy gifts for other women. Each layer of truth made me lighter and freer. I started therapy. In sessions, I realized my need to fix everything, to believe in people, came from an old fear of being alone, a fear that made me ignore obvious signs, silence my intuition, and accept crumbs. I also returned to drawing, but not for the agency. I quit. I started creating my own illustrations, posted them on Instagram, and to my surprise, commissions started coming in. Within 3 months, I was living off it, and more. I was happy, truly happy. I reconnected with old friends. I started going to jazz concerts with my cousin Anna, walking in Central Park, eating brunch alone without shame. I got a small tattoo on my wrist, a tiny turtle, a reminder that even the slowest steps take you far if they're steady. And then, when I was whole again, not perfect but whole, I met someone. His name is Marcus, a sound engineer, shy, obsessed with vintage vinyl, and completely transparent. We met at an art gallery in Soho. I was commenting on a painting that looked like an open wound, and he said, "Sometimes, what's ugly at first is what transforms us most." And I knew. I didn't need to chase someone to notice me. Someone saw me for real, cracks and all. Marcus knows my whole story. He's taken on my traumas with care, without rushing. Once, holding my hand in a bar, he said, You're not the betrayed woman from the video. You're the woman who had the courage to walk away. Today, when people ask if I regret making that public speech, exposing everything in front of strangers, I smile. Because that was the moment I chose myself. It wasn't revenge. It was an act of self-love. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I wanted to save myself. And if you're watching this, and you're in a relationship where you're investigating, sleeping with doubts, where your heart hurts more than it smiles, know that you're not crazy. Your intuition is a gift. Trust it. Betrayal hurts, of course. But you know what hurts more? Living like everything's fine. Don't let shame silence you. You're not less worthy because someone deceived you. The mistake is theirs. The shame is theirs. The cowardice is theirs. You deserve to be loved with truth, with presence, with loyalty. And if you ever have to choose between staying with someone who betrays you or staying with yourself, choose yourself, always. Because in the end, the most important love in your life is the one you build within. As for Andrew, well, someone told me he's trying to sell scripts about love and forgiveness. Ironic, isn't it? After all, someone who betrays on a honeymoon will never write a truly happy ending. Now tell me, would you have exposed everything like I did, or would you have kept the pain quiet? Have you been through something similar? Share in the comments. Your story might save another woman too. And if you have a friend ignoring the signs, send her this video. Sometimes all we need is a little push to remember our own worth.